I do have obsession with Chicago lately, and even though
Oh,
you're not from Chicago, you're from Aurora, from your Spotify bio at least, and I looked that
uh,
up, and that's about close to an hour outside of
right,
Chicago, so you're not specifically Chicago, but
right.
just
It's like that running joke where everyone outside of Chicago goes, "Oh, I'm from Chicago," but you're not.
yeah, we get
Everyone
that.
from New Jersey, I'm from New York, but you're not.
Yeah, we get that here in Seattle as well, because like fuck, what was I listening to? Oh, I was listening to this podcast. Oh, what was it? It was Whiskey Ginger. Do you know what Whiskey Ginger is?
No.
Ah, it's what's his name's podcast? Fuck, I'm forgetting his name. Andrew Santino. He was Little Dicky's manager in Dave, if you watched that.
Oh, wow.
But he's also a comedian, and basically he had this Seattle comedian on the podcast the other day, and they were talking about how Seattle is this built up city, and then literally 20 minutes outside of Seattle, it's all just fucking farmland, and then 2 hours out, it's Hickville, and it's just funny. Like, there's nothing really built up outside of Seattle. Of course, there's cities and stuff, but it's mostly kind of like farmland. Like for me, even I grew up in East Seattle, but now I live an hour outside of Seattle, and I'm in the fucking woods. So, and people fucking 2.5, 3 hours out will be like, yeah, I'm from Seattle. Because you're not going to be like, oh, I'm from bumfuck Washington.
Right, they won't know where you're talking about to begin with.
Yeah. So with that though, I wanna focus on like your come up, because you gained success kind of young, and then you transitioned over to this like psychedelic band. So I want to focus a little bit on your come up, even though it's probably been beating like a dead horse a little bit, but I feel like that's important for my listeners, and maybe we'll learn some more stuff about you that your fans don't know about either. And yeah,
Yeah, it is an interesting part about my story, thinking back, because I started, even though I'm making the music and I am who I am now, and I'm making the music of what I wanted to make when I was 16, my story into the music industry was so different. And
yeah,
I think looking back, I almost see it as a really cool opportunity to kind of show people to just do whatever they want.
yeah.
Uh, so yeah, I grew up in Illinois. I was born in Aurora. I lived in Naperville. Sorry, I lived in Plainfield, Illinois. My dad had a music store in called Naperville Music that sold guitars and pianos.
Mm.
So that was like the family business, and that's kind of how I cut my teeth. I would just run around the store and I'd pick up like a guitar, I'd pick up a piano, or I'd pick up drums, bass, like, and I would just kind of sit there for hours. And I remember the first time I had this teach yourself guitar chords book, and I had to be about like 7 or 8 years old. And I taught myself E and A. And I remember like the first moment that I learned B, I went, oh, like that's enough for a song.
Mm.
Even though honestly E was enough for a song, but like uh, I remember that the exact moment sitting on the stool, and I pieced together that I could play the Beatles in spite of all the danger.
Mm-hmm.
And I sat there and I played it for the first time, and that feeling was just electric. And I just really never stopped after that. Oh, my first instrument was drums. That was my first love. My brother was a drummer, and there was always a drum set up, so I wanted to be like him. So I just would jump on his kit,
Yeah.
and I would sing like old 60s songs. My dad was in a like a 60s kind of cover band growing up, which kind of, I mean, does sound like the genesis for a lot of what I'm into.
Yeah. Yeah.
Although I just feel like it would be like that anyways. And I used to come up on stage and I would play guitar, and they would do like this bit like who's this kid who wandered on stage, and that was really fun. And I played for a lot of people because my dad would do just like the Illinois festival circuit, like Oktoberfest, Strawberry Fest. We're on the little like metal truck thing, and you're playing to like a
Oh, with the cover band, you're saying?
yeah, like a cover band. It's like a hill, people in a blanket, and it's really cool. I mean, I'm really nostalgic for those kind of times. So I think that's where like kind of the genesis of stuff started. We moved to Arizona when I was 14 because my parents wanted to get away from like the weather, and me not really being too online to life. I was just like, sure. Then
Yeah.
not really thinking that I was gonna have no friends when I moved out there. So when I
My
moved,
friends are just gonna move with me or something, right?
Right. I was like, I'll make friends. And I was like, what are you talking about? I'm the least sociable person that I know. And so when I moved to Arizona, I started writing songs for the first time. And that was, the years might get a little foggy, but like, I just remember at the time it was like that explosion of like indie pop, indie rock in mainstream.
Mm-hmm.
And the moment I started writing songs, the first stuff I made actually kind of sounds like Communicant,
Mm.
but a 15-year-old version. And then I feel like once my parents heard it and then my friends heard it, the music I was making, there was like a lot of like, oh, you could be this thing, you could be, but you could be famous, but you need to have a TV show, like you need to be on Disney. It was like that kind of bad influence already started to get in.
So it was like
Like
early 2000s, you're saying? Or is this?
this is 2012,
Oh,
and
yeah, yeah.
so in my mind I started going, oh, okay, and I started writing songs, and I think right there it's like this Back to the Future alternate timeline where I started writing songs and doing and expressing myself and everything, but in a subconscious way of commercialism, which is not a bad thing. It was influencing me in the wrong way. Where I feel like if I can go back, I would have kept myself just making the music that kind of sounded like Communicant when I was 15.
Right.
Um, so I made this pop record and I put it up on Spotify, and the lead song just blew up because Spotify had just come out and it got in a Spotify official Spotify playlist, which is still the only time it's ever happened to me. And
Oh, so you didn't even like put any marketing behind it?
no, I was like, my friends are just gonna put this up on the fridge and be like, that's nice, and go along with their day. But then it got in this playlist called "Smart is the New Sexy." Hilarious. Consider there's nothing sexy about me or that song, and so yeah, that was kind of my genesis into the music industry. It was after that Warner Brothers contacted me and reached out and reissued the record, and then
Holy
they
shit.
put a lot of pressure, like, um, and my experience on a major label there was like creative freedom under a you better do this kind of thing. So it was like, we're gonna give you, go make your record, but you need to make a top 40 record. You need to compete with Shawn Mendes. You need to compete with this shit and like this and that shit. And
Yeah.
I just really, I was like, I did the assignment. I was like, cool, you're like 18 and you just like, these stars in your eyes, and someone's like, do this, and you're like, you got it. I'm gonna do that. So
Wait, so how old were you when you got signed to Warner?
on
You're
my 18th birthday,
18. Holy shit. And then you released this song when you're how old?
the first thing I ever released was when I was 14. I've
14.
taken a lot of stuff down, but uh, why am I telling people that? But when I was 15, I put out what was called Morning Stories, and that was kind of like a baby pop psych. It was like I was listening to like the Black Keys and the Vaccines at that time, and everything was kind of like farfisa and blown out with reverb,
Yeah.
and to me that had a lot more charm than the stuff I made after that. I know, like I it feels weird because like I kind of put down a lot of that music from my solo like artist career, and I know a lot of people like that stuff and connect with it, and I think that's really cool. Um,
Wait,
if you connect with it and stuff.
wait, so did you wanted to be famous and it just happened? Like was there any like marketing plan behind any of this, or you just threw it up
No,
and just hope
no.
for something to happen?
Um,
Or
well, I think being honest, I think when you're 16, 17, you're like, yeah, I want to be famous. And I
yeah.
think when you grow up, it's you realize it's different, which is my dream now is I want to be successful.
Yeah.
As in you want to be you want to be able to continue to do what you love. And that's what matters to me. It doesn't really matter. Actually, being famous would be a nightmare. I would absolutely like to not be famous.
You could be
uh,
famous for licking the fucking ice cream in the grocery store. You know what I mean?
right. I just think fame means a total different thing in
Yeah.
2022 than it did. I feel like in the, from let's say the 50s to the early 2000s, I think fame was a byproduct of being really good at something.
Yes.
Now it is a totally different, like the separation of talent and fame. And I don't like it. Kind of makes me really anxious.
It's like being an influencer. Like in the before social media, being an influencer meant you were like a fucking military veteran or something, or a motivational speaker. Now being an
To me,
influencer,
that's a lot cooler than making ice cream pop at a grocery store.
now that's what an influencer is, just licking ice cream or some shit, or licking the toilet. I don't know why everything has to do with licking, but like, when
Right.
like someone's like
Yeah.
licking the toilet
Yeah,
on
you're
the
giving me
airplane.
ideas here. This is clearly the pathway to success. But to answer your question, it really was that crazy and that fast because I was like, we don't know anybody. We don't
Yeah.
know this or that. We couldn't send it out to anywhere. I mean, we tried to cold send emails out to people when I made my first album, but it was like I uploaded it to Spotify. I remember being in the patio in Arizona with my brother and him going like, "Have you heard of Spotify?" And I was like, "No, what's that?" And he's like, "Well, Paul Simon's on it." And I'm like, "Okay, well, they got everything." I don't know why that was my reaction. And I was like, "Okay, well, when I upload it through TuneCore, I'll just like check the box for Spotify."
Yeah.
Checked it, um, and I remember just kind of went along with my life. I played a gig at a local restaurant for two people. And
Nice.
I remember a week later, I was at Panda Express because I'm from the Midwest. And
That's high
uh,
class.
I remember checking my Spotify. I was like, oh, I haven't like logged in to check my Spotify to see
Yeah.
how that's doing. And I remember logging in a week after I uploaded it, and the first song on my album had 80,000 plays.
Wow.
And I thought that it was a typo uh, because I remember once when I was a kid, it said on Instagram like, "Oh, like Haley Williams from Paramore followed you," and it totally said that. And I even like went and checked her like profile, and it said she was following me. And then I refreshed my phone, and it was a lie. I don't know
No.
how. So I was just very like, this is fake. I kept refreshing it, and it was real. And I called my manager, who I had just got, and I was like, "Did you see this?"
Wait, how'd you
And
get a manager? What was the process for that?
the process for that was just like cold reaching out emails, and
Oh.
we met an attorney from sending out emails, like a music attorney,
Yeah.
and he's like, "I'll pass it along to some people." Everyone said no except for my manager Jeffrey, who was working at Hollywood Records at the time, and I was like, "Whoa, this got to a record label, like wow!" And he's like, "When can you come out to LA?" And I was like, "I'm gonna be on a record label," and I flew out there and played for him in his office, and he's like, I talked to him for 2 hours, basically about records, not even really about anything else, which has
Yeah.
been, yeah. And I got home thinking like I was gonna be on this label, and blah blah blah. And he's like, "I'm gonna leave my job to manage you,"
What?
and that was 8 years ago, and he's still my manager.
Wow. So
Uh,
that's a
yeah,
crazy.
it's a really it's a really interesting story, kind of like how I I started, and uh, yeah, and then cut to like made a record on Warner Brothers, and Warner Brothers, everyone got fired who signed me, and there was no intention to actually put out the record that I made. And
Wait, what? They got fired because they hired because they signed you, or
oh
what?
no, more complicated than that. I mean, just that's a major label thing, right? That
Yeah.
just like a new CEO will come in, a new president will come in, and poof, just turnover is super crazy. And pretty much everyone that I worked with either got fired, or they were like, "This isn't what I was promised. I'm quitting."
Mm.
And I remember my A&R calling me, being like, "Look, between you and me, like you should get off this label." He's like, "I love you and I love your music, and I want to see you succeed, and I don't want to see you like handcuffed for the rest of your life." So
Wow.
he got me. He and the president got me out of my contract just like that.
Holy shit. So
I got my record back.
you saw some like dark sides of being on a record label then.
Oh, I thought my experience was unique for about like a day, and then everyone I've ever talked to was like, "Yeah, It's like saying like, oh, I had the worst time at the DMV. Like I had to wait in this line, and then they made me wait in this line, and someone goes, "Have you never been to the DMV before?" It was exactly like
Oh,
that.
that's sad.
um, and I feel really bad for a lot of artists that didn't get their record back, and I think about that all the time because I don't think some people who are artists on the label were lucky enough to have a phone call like that.
Right.
Um, so that was really tough, and that was emotionally devastating for me. It's like breaking up with your future because to me that was a security net. When in reality, it actually hurt me a lot because
Yeah.
they slowed my momentum because I had put out this album and I had the freedom to make and produce another album. But the problem was that they actually slowed things down so much. I totally lost that momentum, which is looking back now, I'm like, thank God.
Wait, so how old were you at this point? Like, how long were you on the record label for?
I feel like I was like a year and a half, maybe 2 years.
Okay.
I think I was like out. I think I signed when I was 18 and I was out by 19. I think it was that.
And that was like 2012, you're saying, or something?
I got signed. When would I have been? I just woke up.
Good morning.
Signed in 2015,
Oh, I was way off.
20, 2014 or 2015. Well, the first album came out in 2014. So in between then, and
Okay.
I was off by 2016.
Got it. So were you still in school during this time, or did you drop out of school to focus on this?
Yeah, I dropped out of school and then
Holy
became
shit.
homeschooled. So I was just
Okay.
doing online K-12 while I was doing all this, uh, which was actually like not stressful. Like I weirdly liked school.
Yeah. And
um, although it was actually like the school I was going to was really difficult, and then the homeschool was way too easy, and I kind of didn't learn anything. But
interesting. Okay.
yeah, so I had done all this work, and here I am off Warner Brothers, and I put out the record that we made myself because I got the master back, and
Mhm.
uh, and a couple months later, I kind of realized I don't really like the record because it sounds so glossy, and so every song was going for a radio hit because it was going for a radio hit, and like that doesn't make a good record.
Right.
And at the same, and I look back at my interviews I did when I was on Warner Brothers, and I'm doing these interviews and I'm talking about Francois Hardy and 13th Floor Elevators and the Millennium, and I think that's when I started getting echoes in my head like, why aren't I making music like the stuff that I like? And I kept soul searching, and I realized why I wasn't was my deep subconscious was going, well, it will never sell. And I think after the Warner Brothers stuff, I had this pessimistic, optimist attitude where I was like, if the world is going to shit, why don't I just make what I want to make? Because I'll be
Right.
happy, like, and it was just such this no brainers, right? So then I was like, I'm going to produce a record myself because I'd only worked with producers to that point, who taught me a lot. But
Even when you like released your first music, or was it just you and the guitar when you first started?
yeah, no, the first album was I made it in my bedroom, and then my manager introduced me to uh, this amazing human being who's I'm actually I saw yesterday he's gonna help on the playing bass on the new Communicant record, but his
Hell
name is
yeah.
John Dragonetti, and he like took me under his wing and he fleshed out my home demos and made the first album.
Nice.
Uh, so that was really cool, and I learned so much from all of them. But once I got off Warner Brothers, I want to produce myself and uh, and just make what I want to do. And what I wanted to do was make psychedelic music. Like that was like if you like put a gun in my head and I had to say something out loud what I wanted to do, I said it out loud. And once I said it and once I knew it, I couldn't unknow it and unsay it. So I made a record, and the other big thing was I got signed to a publisher and they were having me co-write with everybody. And doing all this co-writing was really affecting how I thought about songwriting, and it was really affecting me. And
In
my
what way though?
it was it really instills in you to write songs like a factory and to write songs to be done,
Mm.
because I also it was a lot of like social anxiety meeting a stranger, and playing music's a pretty naked thing. Like that's like your soul. And that was really hard writing something from scratch. And really in my case, like 90% of the co-writes, the other person just kind of sat there and waited for me to have something. And I would just kind of have to put the whole team on my back and just write the song. And then I was just like, why am I giving 50% of the songwriting credit to you? Like after at the end of the day. And that started to frustrate me a lot. And then I started working with people who I would like find out were like really problematic, like after working with them. And that really sucked.
Yeah.
And I frankly, I kind of hate co-writing. I was really very prolific by myself, and I feel like the world's like, you got to co-write, you got to make pop music. And that was really ugly.
Is it
I
a
really,
is it a good paying job though? Like, would you recommend? Because I know a lot of artists feel like that might
no,
be the next step if they can't. Or,
jobs.
oh, were you saying you glitched out?
Being a lawyer is a good paying job.
Oh,
If you want a good paying job, don't touch the music industry with a 100-yard stick. I got paid $60 for the last Communicant gig,
yeah.
but it doesn't like that doesn't matter. You don't do it for money. Um, you just got to. I mean that's the thing, Like I've taken on a bunch of jobs to support doing Communicant, but I'm happy. I'm like artistically happy, and that that does mean more. Like that does mean a lot more at the end of the day.
So so when you were on the record label though, but before you got on the record label, you were talking about this playlist thing that happened.
Yeah.
Did would you say you saw more success from the playlist than the record label?
Oh my God. Yeah.
Oh,
Big. Oh man. I mean, I got on the record label because of the playlist, and the record label didn't get me anywhere. They didn't even get me on the radio, which they promised was the only thing they were going to do for me.
wow.
Uh, and I mean, it was really weird. It's like I just signed into Spotify, and it was on this playlist called "Smart is the New Sexy," and then it got 8 million plays in like 2-3 months. I mean, it was really fast.
Mm.
And that was such a weird experience. It felt like War Games or something, like the movie. I don't know if you've ever seen that, like where you accidentally sign into the computer and then he's like hacked into this huge thing. It's like that's kind of how it felt.
Yeah.
You
Dang.
uploaded the song and then now it's got all these plays. But I think with that came a lot of confidence that I can make music.
Right.
But it then came a lot of like soul searching, as like, okay, people are listening to you now, and I feel like I'm not displaying my actual self. And then whenever I would do interviews and I would do I remember I did this thing when I was on Warner Brothers. They asked me like what I'm into, and I was like, all I care about is vinyl records. And they had me do they got in contact with Record Store Day, and I did like an interview with Record Store Day, and I showed them my record collection. I pulled out like Blossom Toes and Billy Nichols and Big Star and Nick Drake. And my manager sent me this email that the Record Store Day guy said, and they're like, okay, come on, like what's the actual story? Who's feeding him the records? This is obviously fake. And I was like thinking like he probably listened to my music, and he's like, no way that those are his records. And it's just a lot of realization. Part of me wonders if I had
Wait,
been more
wait,
comfortable in
were they saying that in a good way or a bad way?
a bad way.
Oh,
I mean, because they didn't believe it. I think I can understand that. I think when once they found out that it was the real records, I'm sure they were like, wow, it is easier to find obscure 60s music than ever, thanks to
right.
Spotify. It's really cool. My manager, who's a record collector, talks a lot about like his discovery of all these bands, and you really had to work tooth and nail, and he had to read a lot of like record catalogs, like stuff like Paul Major putting out to find these records. And now now it's like the Spotify algorithm, the Discovery Weekly is
Yeah.
incredible. It really, it knows exactly what to recommend you. Really uncanny, but I do like it. I
Yeah.
found a lot of music from it.
So, were you able to carry over any of your success from your solo career as Dylan Gardner over to Communicant, or did you have
I
to
would
start from
say like
scratch?
realistically 1%. It
Mm.
did feel like a start from scratch. So I made a third record that was I was gonna call it my name still.
Mm.
I hate saying my name, it feels so weird. Like I was gonna make a third record called my name, and the very last song that I made, I finally got a little bit of that realm that I was trying to shove into my music a
Mm.
little bit. It had a little, it felt a little psychedelic. Um, and I'll also preface it with this: like my love of psychedelic music didn't stem from drugs, which is not I don't do drugs.
Whoa,
But
whoa, 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 whoa! You're saying you
yeah,
make psychedelic music and you don't do drugs?
not really no.
That's a very wow.
uh, and I also felt weird about that until I found out a lot of my favorite psychedelic artists don't do drugs either.
Oh, it's like
But,
is it like Future then? Well, I still feel like Future probably did drugs at a certain point, but
oh,
now
it's just
he's
like Captain Beefheart or Frank Zappa or those two, and that's it.
I
No, my love from psychedelic music always came from the color of the production, and there were no rules,
yeah.
and you'd be listening to a song, and these guitars would just they would just come in and out, and the vocals would start coming at you with these 16th delay echoes, and to me that was my first steps. I've always been drawn towards surrealism, and I'm realizing this more and more. Where now the only where people say describe yourself, I just say surrealist is what I want to be. Period. And I think that's what was drawing me towards it was realism was really not my bag, and it was really kind of scaring me. And uh, pop music started to feel really formulaic, and I understand that a lot of psychedelic music
Wait, can you
feels.
break down what is the difference between realism and surrealism?
I'll put it. Let's see. Let's say realism is a picture of me, and it's just a portrait of my face.
Okay.
That's real, and that's everyday life. Uh, Surrealism would be a picture of me, but this is floating in front of my face,
Like Picasso type shit.
and this is my head, and this doesn't make sense, but also it does make sense in an autonomous sort of way.
Yeah.
And I just really fell in love with that, and over time you start to I'm a big subscriber to this the whole kind of method of creativity that David Lynch talks about, which is like chasing the big fish and kind of like following it down. And the more I started to do that with my intuition and what I liked and my soul, I realized that like my mind, my creative space, it exists in a surrealist realm. It exists in a realm that is colorful, and it's this giant landscape and everything.
Do you think
Uh,
do you think that
yeah,
comes from influences though, or do you think as like a kid, do you think this is how you thought creatively, whether you're drawing or whatever it was, or do you think it came from certain music you started listening to and your experiences from being on record labels and
that is a
being
good question. I think part of me thinks that you're just into what you're into, like
Mhm.
when you're born, and it takes a really long time to kind of figure it out, and it takes a long time to sound like yourself. But also at the same time, growing up like such a Beatles fan, stuff like Revolver on really resonated with me, and I was really into cartoons. That I look back and those cartoons are very surreal and psychedelic in nature. Um,
Yeah, like
yeah, it's hard to know like where it traces back. Obviously, like my dad made very straight ahead power pop. Although actually, I gotta say, the last thing he made when he was making music in the '80s, is really psychedelic. It's a song called All in My Mind, and it's chorused and it's phased, and there's like a backwards stuff and it sounds like XTC. And I remember asking him about that because my dad, is a total like teetotaler, has never even
Dude, I love XTC. I haven't heard anyone talk about
I,
fucking Something's Wrong with Nigel or whatever that song's called. Dude,
yeah,
that's like one of my favorite songs.
so great. They were a huge influence too.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I asked my dad about that, and he's just like, I don't know. And, and it's just this weird unconscious thing, I guess. Yeah, so I don't know what drew me to surrealism, but I know that I would just really just fall in love with it more and more and more. And I just started to see myself and my soul in the work of surrealism, and just really was then inspired by psychedelic music or music with surrealist lyrics, or furniture became a really big inspiration, like surrealist interior design.
Like fucking Dr. Seuss.
Um, that's that's a little children's, although I do love Dr. Seuss. Like obviously like uh like the writings of like Arthur Rimbaud, or William Burroughs, or like paintings of like Salvador Dali,
Okay,
Magritte.
yeah, yeah. I don't know why I said Dr. Seuss. I just think of when I think of Dr. Seuss, I think of just oblong furniture and hats and cats. I don't
It's,
know.
it's the right it's the right school of thought. But here's what I like about it, and here's what I like about surrealism is like the core and the heart of surrealism is pure autonomy, which is basically your subconscious. And
Right.
it's like if you take a pen to paper and you just start drawing. And I think someone would look at that and go, I can do that. Anyone can do that. But it's deeper than that. I feel like the best surrealism has the nature of the autonomy brings out really deep layered emotion and feelings, because it is your subconscious and it's what you're actually feeling. And I have learned that since a very young age, where I was always a person that had the color in the lines, and I really liked thick like black lines when tracing like characters and stuff.
Mhm.
And it was when I started to close my eyes and I would not look at what I'm drawing, I would make something way better. I just would,
Mm.
because I wasn't thinking about it. I wasn't so like focused and OCD about it, and it allowed to full creativity. It was reaching your full creative potential. Um, yeah, that was something I really fell in love with, and I just really really connected with it. I just saw it as a world of endless possibility, and I saw psychedelia and surrealism as anything that sort of transports you to somewhere else. Like in the simplest terms, it's just if you ever listen to a song, and it doesn't see that my thing is it doesn't have to be psychedelic and about a unicorn or whatever. It's like
Right.
you could be listening to I don't know, like a James Blake song, and close your eyes, and by the end of it, I was so meditative. You kind of open your eyes and you go, "Whoa! I forgot I was in my living room."
Yeah.
And that is, to me, that's the height of experience, like of it in anything. So that became my new rabbit's chase, which was guiding people through 40-minute tours.
Hmm.
And I wanted to create a realm that's in my mind space and try to go straight from the id to the speaker. And so when the person is listening to that, they are just, it's cinematic. Like you are transposed into another world, which is another thing I learned is a lot of the best records ever made are very cinematic. It doesn't mean they have a lot going on
Hmm.
though. Just they just feel, listening to them feels like watching a movie.
Like the
Even simple,
THX sound.
yeah. But I realize that doesn't mean it has to have a lot going on. Like Abbey Road, as compared to like Pink Moon by Nick Drake, are both very cinematic records. But like Pink Moon is just him and a guitar. But there's something. It's just everything to a T is the album cover and the engineering and his just of the dark chocolate of his voice. I
Yeah.
like to compare singers' voices to food, which is kind of weird, but
What would Drake's food be? passion fruit, but
Probably would be a passion fruit. That is kind of funny. I mean, that probably is a little bit of subconscious him realizing that. I've always thought that my voice sounds like a lemon or a lemon tart.
oh.
Uh,
Do you like either of those fruit? I guess lemon tart's not a fruit. Do you like lemons?
yeah, yeah. See, so I don't want to diverge too much, but it is a really fun game where someone will be like, "I don't understand what you mean." I'll be like, "Okay, let me put it in these terms." The singer of Smash Mouth, his voice is a corn dog, and then everyone goes, "Oh, okay, I get it."
Smash Mouth. Oh God. Somebody
Yeah.
want. Yeah, that's great.
So I start going down a rabbit hole. I start talking for a long time. I'm sorry. So basically, I made a third record, and when I finished making it, I like mixed it and I mastered it, and I was ready to put it out. I had like it uploaded and everything. I'd spent all the money I'd made on Warner Brothers making it, and then I was listening in the van with my friends when we were on tour,
Yeah.
playing kind of the last remaining. Uh, I'll call them like DG shows, like the pop shows.
Mhm.
And they were listening to this and they're like, "This is awesome." And I was sitting there went, "This sucks. This is not good." And the reason being, I suddenly heard that 50% of me was still in the camp of, well, this will never sell. And
Oh, you weren't all in yet.
I wasn't all in yet. I had a baby toe in when I was listening. I was like, this sounds like a baby toe into what I wanted. And I can put it out, but why? Yeah. Like I went home and I was like, I'm gonna write. The first thing I was gonna do is I'm gonna write another song. I'm gonna write another song that's psychedelic and do the production the way I wanted to. And I did that, and I went, whoa. And I remember when I was getting it mixed, the mixer turned around to me and he goes, "This is your first psychedelic song."
Mm.
And that feeling was amazing. Also calling back, oh God, I'm all over the place. I tell this story a lot, but like the other big realization with how I knew that I wanted to do that when I made the switch was I was at Amoeba in LA, like record shopping,
Mhm.
and I was in the psychedelic 45s bin, and someone accidentally put my Warner Brothers 45 in there because it definitely was not supposed to be in there. And
Ah, wow.
seeing it in there was the best feeling ever. I mean, it was so life affirming. I was like, whoa, like, what if it actually wasn't supposed to be in this? Uh,
Damn.
realization. But so I scrapped that third album, which in the final, days of that, I was like, this doesn't really sound like my old stuff, anyways.
Mm.
And I was thinking a lot about records I love and things I love about records, and I was getting more. I want to create this realm, and I thought to myself like, this would also be best presented as a band. And then I had a lot of fear where it's like, well, you'd be starting over all over again. And then part of me went, well, I don't really have a choice.
Yeah.
The other thing being that if I made this Communicant record and put it out as DG, it would come out next to all those shitty pop songs. So I
Yeah.
would be like, who's Communicant? And or let me hear this record, and then you go on Spotify, my number one song would still be like, Let's Get Started, and they'd be like, yeah, no, thanks, I'm not listening to
Yeah.
that. Which I would do. I always try to see it as what I would do. If I had never heard of me. It's really hard to have perspective like that.
Yeah.
Of like what it would be like to see yourself live or hear yourself not knowing you, because there's a lot of bias, obviously.
But either way, was it like a scary jump to switch over?
Scariest jump. I honestly felt like I was committing career suicide.
Damn.
I kind of sat there in silence, and I was just like, I'm gonna do this record, and I'm gonna have to get a job, and that's okay, and that's okay, because I said you're gonna be happy, and I told myself, I said honestly, I don't know why you were so worried about making money or or being successful, because if you're truly are true to yourself, you're probably going to be more successful, period, anyways,
Right.
which I still really do feel is true. I do feel that if you really are true to what you are and do the best you can with what you are, you will arrive where you're supposed to go. But that was really scary, and there's no amount of TED Talks and hang in there posters that'll help you with that. And the only thing that did help me was the fact that I liked the music I was making so much. Or I would just go like, "You mean I finally get to tap into all this music that's in my head?" And oh my god, it was a blank canvas, and I hadn't felt that blank canvas feeling since I first started writing songs. And I made Sun Goes Out, the Communicant album, so fast, and it was awesome. It was such a fun time. I would just be in the studio and working and mixing and mixing and mixing, because I had also spent all the money to make the third album that never came out. So I had to make this all myself. I had to mix 6 out of the 10 songs myself.
Yeah.
And Mike mix a few of the songs because he's a really good mixer, and I was starting to get really overwhelmed. And I played everything myself because I was alone in the house and my brother was at work, who usually plays drums, and I was like getting impatient waiting for him to come home, so I just played the drum parts, and it was so therapeutic. And I think, before I die, I would be so glad that I made that transition. It was the best thing I've ever done, and I decided at the same time, like, this is me, this is my album, this is the band. And when I made the announcement to like the fans that were there already, I feel like a lot of them just jumped. Well, a lot of them didn't know what was going on. A lot of them didn't see it, so then we're like, "Who the hell is Communicant?"
Mm.
Because social media, right? You announce something, but it doesn't mean everyone saw it. So
Yeah.
when you do your thing, it doesn't. So yeah, like lost a bunch of followers. I was almost kind of happy about it because a lot of my followers were people that didn't listen to me for the music. It was more like my associations with YouTubers that I was doing as a side job to pay for making music.
Right.
But that being said, my fans who were there since day one were like, were so in. They were like, "Yeah, of course, this is you." And I thought that was really, really cool. Like I'm talking like the very first fans of my music, but even before the music was blowing up on Spotify, like when it had like 10 plays,
Yeah.
those fans were really into it. And I kind of realized, like, your real fans, they grew up with you,
Yeah.
And that was really cool. And those people stuck around. But yeah, it was starting from scratch, and that was really, really depressing. Being like, I put in 7 years of work every single day, like all day, played hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of shows. I mean, I played like something like 200 shows in 2016 or 2017, trying to get the name out there and everything. And now I'm completely starting over, like
Mm.
from scratch.
But at least did you feel like you had at least a little bit of a template to work with? Like you knew A&Rs, you had a manager, you had experience being on a record label, so you really knew what
Yeah,
helped and
I
what
learned a
didn't
lot.
help.
So I knew a lot, but I didn't know, I couldn't get a label or anything to put it out. But I realized like maybe that wasn't the worst thing in the world. I just put it out, and then just started sharing it as much as I could, which I really hate self promotion. It's really cringy, but
Hey, we support up and coming artists here.
yeah, like it's awesome when someone else reaches out to you and then you're like, sure, I'll talk about my work. But to me, it's always been really hard to swallow being like, hey, I'm a big fan of you. Can you check this out? But I think, just like over time, it started to find the right people, and then I would meet these people, and then we talk, and then I'd have the same interests as them, and then they'd show more friends, and and I did this single with Hypnotic Bridge out in California called "She Moves the Sky," which introduced me to a lot of really awesome people and kind of helped put me in the scene. That was also really hard, when I was doing the pop stuff. I was like, I'm not in a scene. I don't know
Right.
anybody, and that's pretty detrimental too, because making music should be a fun thing. It should be in a community and a scene and come up together. And that was always another dream I had. So Yeah, so basically arrived where, Sun Goes Out exists and Communicant's a thing, and I'm producing this realm that's in my head, and we're putting out a new song Friday uh, to hold people over until I finish the album that I'm working on right now. This new song's not going to be on the album. This is a standalone thing, but I just really like it a lot.
Well, this is perfect. Dude, I literally keep reaching out to people out of the blue, and then it happens to align with their fucking releases. So this is perfect timing. Damn. So, what do you do for work now? Has it changed since you first left the label, or have you stayed with the same job? Or
I worked at a hi-fi store for a long time. I helped at record stores because I have a knowledge of records that's like a dictionary. So did that stuff. I did a lot of ghost writing and ghost producing for YouTubers and just clients.
wait, what do you mean by YouTubers? Like you're
Like
like funny content? You're like ghostwriting that, or what?
like YouTubers who want to be a musician and like want a song will like
Oh,
be like, can you write a song? Can you produce a song? Can you make me sing?
huh.
Uh, so I'm like, gladly for this amount of money. Just
Yeah.
because it's a lot of work. Um, so that stuff is what financed like Communicant and financed just being alive.
Nice. And so is Communicants a band, and you're the front man? Is there like how many members are there, or is it like a band that switches out members all the time, or?
Communicant is like a Tame Impala type situation where it is me. It's just me,
Hmm.
but it is growing into something more than that because my brother, being my drummer, is such a great drummer and has a lot of impact on the record and in the closing moments of Sun Goes Out started kind of voicing his opinion, and we started to work together to make something better than what already existed.
Yeah.
It was kind of me and my brother, and then I got a touring band from
Nice.
my friend Jeff and my friend Eric, who is in the band at the touring capacity right now. But Jeff also started to get more involved, and I realized like I want to make this next record with more of a band involvement, treat this like a band.
Mm.
I liked reading about the way that like in Radiohead, like Tom York would have the song in the same way that I've been making my songs and demo them out, but bring them to the other guys, and then their expertise has, yes, I mean, trust is a big part of it. You trust that they're coming from the same place you are, and it has been good, and it has made the songs a lot better than they would have been. So right now, the band is kind of like a three-person effort,
Mm-hmm.
and yeah, I guess that's all I can say right now. It's like it is like a three-person effort at the moment.
Right.
But it's my band, it's my baby, it's me sitting in front of the computer the whole day. It's like the other guys I almost keep in a limbo so that they have a fresh take on what I'm working on because I'm always so just involved in it all the time.
Yeah.
Um,
So are you usually at a home studio then, or do you still take your records to studios once they're like halfway complete, or how does that work for you?
yeah, it's made here. So oh god, it's 1 o'clock.
Oh shit.
All right, I'll wrap it up. Or I can also call you later.
Yeah, man, we gotta do a part 2 or something. Basically, I think we have an intro at least for Dylan Gardner of Communicant. There we go. And it's not Communicant, and it's not Communicant. So we got it all sorted out. I love your music. I actually found you from your Dylan Gardner page and then found Communicant.
Really?
So yeah, Spotlight. Yeah, that's my version of Spotlight. And I think you're a cool guy. I like your hair. And yeah, man. Hopefully I can have you back on soon. And I hope to come to LA again soon, and maybe we could just do something in person. But in the meantime, what's the easiest way for people to reach you?
Just do the Instagram, just at Communicant Band. And, just follow us on our Spotify, and new single coming out Friday and new album hopefully by the end of the year.
Hell yeah. Well, this has been the NAST podcast with
Dylan Gardner of Communicant.
And we did it.